Refuge is a safe place.
I don't think it's working. Yeah, it is working.
Is it working? I forgot what we're supposed to say. Perfect.
Refuge is a safe place. On stop.
Sorry.
Where do I look?
Eyes, is it okay if I look there?
Fine. Explore
Explore.
their faith in Jesus.
Mouth it. Okay.
Go.
Refuge is a safe place for people to. No.
That's not it. You ready?
Safe place is a.
Refuge is a safe place for all people.
Refuge is a safe place for all people.
Refuge is a safe place for all people to explore.
Why can't I remember?
All people.
Well, to restore and explore their faith in Jesus and his church.
Refuge is a safe place for all people to explore and restore their faith in Jesus.
And his church.
Huh?
And his church.
And his church.
There we go. This is good. Okay.
All right. Action.
Refuge is a safe place for all people to explore and restore their faith in Jesus and his church.
Hey. All right, good evening and welcome to Refuge.Church. My name is David and I'm one of the pastors here at Refuge. It is so good to be here to worship with you tonight. I'm so glad to see you guys are here with us worshiping rather than joining the other heathens who are at home watching the Final Four. I'm kind of sorry. I'm just discombobulated. I think it's because Carolina didn't make it to the Final Four. I'm not bitter. All right, let's see if this will work. All right, last week we started a two-part series called Before and After, where we looked at Jesus and his life before and after the cross and what that means for us today. Well, tonight we are going to conclude this series with looking at post-resurrection Jesus, specifically one person that Jesus encountered. Now, we all love a good before and after story. We love to see before and after pictures of someone's physical transformation. We like to see before and after pictures and watch these shows on HGTV of homes being renovated, you know, where Chip and Joanna Gaines, they come and they redo an entire house made out of shiplap that they find in an old factory mill or something. We find ourselves glued to our phones looking at before and after videos, to which my best friend just admitted to me, hi Stephanie, I'm throwing you under the bus right now, that she loves to follow people on TikTok who do these before and after videos of them mowing grass. I'm not lying. She spends hours watching people mow grass. Let that sink in for a minute. I mean, have you heard the phrase, I'd rather watch grass grow? Well, she'd rather watch grass be mowed. It's so weird. But she loves to see how somebody's yard has become transformed from before and after. Well, tonight we are not going to watch grass grow. And tonight, Chip and Joanna Gaines will not be joining us for worship. They're probably watching the Final Four. We are going to look at someone that most of us, if not all of us in this room, have heard about, read about, and maybe even studied before. We're going to look at his life before Jesus' death and after Jesus' death. But before we get into that story, I want to tell you another story that I believe is similar and one that ties in well with what we are about to study. Now, I saw a movie a while back, and it's actually one of my all-time favorite movies ever. Now, most of you probably have never even heard of this movie before. It's not very well known at all. It's not very popular, and most of you probably don't watch movies anyway. But if there was a way that I could properly introduce this movie in the hopes that some of you might know what I'm talking about, but I just don't really know if there's anything that I can introduce to you or not. We'll see. No, that's not it, but thanks for trying. So I guess I'm going to have to try my best to explain to you this movie, because I know you haven't seen it, not to mention the amazing Broadway play that they've made about it, and I've seen 3 times, but that's beside the point. All right, here goes. Hang with me. This movie is about this little lion cub. It starts out with this monkey holding this little lion cub up in the air, and all the animals bowed down to this little lion cub to be. I know this sounds weird, but just hang with me. This cub was destined to be king, to rule the land. His father began teaching him about being king and how to hunt. He was told of places that he was not allowed to go, places that the light did not touch. But this Lion King did not listen to his dad, and he went to those dark places because he was a brave little lion cub. When he actually tested his roar out against the hyenas when they had him cornered, only to get laughed at by hyenas and only to be rescued by his dad. One day, while out, this little lion cub got lost in a bunch of animals, a stampede. Now, he was holding on to this little limb. I mean, you just had to see the movie. I know you just haven't seen it. But he was holding on to this little limb here. And then his father came to rescue him yet again. And his father got killed. To which I always forward through this part, because it punches me in the feelings every time that I watch it. So this cub was so burdened by the guilt and so certain that he would not be worthy to be king that he ran away. Well, actually, the hyenas chased him away. Now, hyenas are known to laugh at you. Hyenas will do that to you when they attack you and make fun of you. You will run from what you're supposed to be. This cub ran and found himself in the desert where these other 2 characters rescued him and taught him this phrase, Hakuna Matata. Now, since you didn't see the movie at all, and you have no idea what I'm talking about, let me tell you what that means. Hakuna Matata, what a wonderful phrase. Hakuna Matata, it means no worries. Now, every time this cub got to thinking about what he was running away from, he would simply say, Hakuna Matata, I'm not going to worry about that. I don't want to think about it. And he kept running. As he kept running, he got older until one day his bae shows up. And she shows up looking all fine. And she tells him that he needs to come back and be the rightful king that he is. He resists at first, and then she pins him down. And this wonderful song starts to play. Can you feel the love tonight? And they had a moment. And then he resists again. Even after that romantic interlude, he resists until his father appears to him in a storm and says in this deep, deep Darth Vader, this is CNN voice, Simba, remember who you are. Then Beyonce starts to sing. Now I'm combining 2 versions of the movie, but I know you haven't seen either one, so it's cool. So once Beyonce starts to sing, I guess he hears her, and then he goes back to do what he's supposed to do. Now, you may not know it, but the plan of God was that you and I be his children. And because we are his children, we are meant to be rulers, heirs to the throne of God. But because of our desire to take care of things ourselves, doing things we're not supposed to do, being chased away by hyenas, we were on the run from God. So what does this movie, this story, have to do with our series Before and After? Well, this movie reminds me of someone in Scripture who was a lot like this little lion cub, Peter. Now, we all know Peter well. He was an up and down kind of guy. Jesus met him fishing one day and told Peter that he was going to be a fisher of men, and there began Peter's journey with Jesus. Peter is one of the most fascinating figures in the New Testament. He was part of Jesus' inner circle and a prominent early church figure. He gets featured in many gospel stories. He may have been the most outspoken of the 12 disciples in Jesus' ministry on earth. So let's look at Peter's life before the cross. Before the cross, the Gospel of John records that when Jesus first met Peter, who was originally called Simon, he says, "You are Simon, son of John. You're going to be called Cephas." Cephas is Aramaic for stone. And the gospel writer adds that this means that Peter is translated as stone. This is why Peter is sometimes referred to as the rock. Not that rock. But, I guess Peter could have looked like that. But just like the little lion cub who was very vocal and thought he could take on the world, we also find Peter as probably the most vocal out of all the disciples about his dedication to following Jesus. He even told Jesus that he would go even to prison and he would even die for Jesus. We find that in Luke 22. Jesus says, "Simon, stay on your toes. Satan has tried his best to separate all of you from me, like chaff from wheat. Simon, I've prayed for you in particular that you not give in or give out. When you have come through the time of testing, turn to your companions and give them a fresh start." Peter said, "Master, I'm ready for anything with you. I'd go to jail for you. I'd die for you." Jesus said, "I'm sorry to have to tell you this, Peter, but before the rooster crows, you will have 3 times denied that you even know me." Thanks a lot, Jesus, for bursting his bubble with that remark. But Jesus was not wrong, and we'll get to that. We even see Peter's dedication to Jesus when Jesus was arrested. Peter defended Jesus to the point where he pulled out his sword and cut the ear off one of the guards. And then we find Jesus rebuking Peter for doing that, told him to put his sword away. Jesus picked up the dude's ear and put it back on his face, on his head, not his face, that'd be weird. So Jesus fixed that problem too. But most of us know more about Peter's downfall than anything else. When Jesus was being beaten before being crucified, Peter was approached 3 different times, just like Jesus told him was going to happen. And Peter was accused of being a follower of Jesus all 3 times. And Peter emphatically denies that he even knew Jesus. So bad that he even cursed at these people for accusing him of such things. And in that moment, Peter's heart sinks. He's overwhelmed with shame, regret, and the weight of his own weakness. How could he have denied the very person he had pledged to follow to the ends of the earth? You know, the image of Jesus' wounded face filled with compassion and love flashes before Peter's eyes, and he realizes the depth of his brokenness. And then we find Peter on the run. The hyenas had gotten the best of him. Peter messed up. He was supposed to be faithful. He was supposed to walk with Jesus. He wanted so bad to be what he was supposed to be who Jesus called him to be. But he messed up. And now we discover Peter in John chapter 21, and this is the story we're going to look at tonight. Starting in verse 1. Afterward, Jesus appeared again to his disciples by the Sea of Galilee. It happened this way. Simon Peter, Thomas, also known as Didymus, Nathanael from Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and 2 other disciples were together. "I'm going out to fish," Simon Peter told them. And they said, "We'll go with you." So they went out and got into the boat, but that night they caught nothing. Early in the morning, Jesus stood on the shore, but the disciples did not realize that it was Jesus. He called out to them, "Friends, haven't you any fish?" "No," they answered. He said, "Throw your net on the right side of the boat, and you will find some." When they did, they were unable to haul the net in because of the large number of fish. Then the disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, "It is the Lord." As soon as Simon Peter heard him say, "It is the Lord," he wrapped his outer garment around him, for he had taken it off, and jumped into the water. The other disciples followed in the boat, towing the net full of fish, for they were not far from shore, about 100 yards. When they landed, they saw a fire burning coals there with fish on it and some bread. Jesus said to them, "Bring some of the fish you have caught." So Simon Peter climbed back into the boat, dragged the net ashore. It was full of large fish, 153. But even with so many, the net was not torn. Jesus said to them, "Come and have breakfast." None of the disciples dared to ask, "Who are you?" They knew it was the Lord. Jesus came, took the bread, and gave it to them, and did the same with the fish. This was now the third time Jesus appeared to his disciples after he was raised from the dead. So here we find the disciples out fishing. You know, Peter was probably out fishing, thinking about the last time maybe he and Jesus went fishing together. And Jesus appears to them. He's on the shore, and he calls out to them, friends. Let that sink in. He calls them friends. Then they knew it was Jesus, and Peter got all excited, and he jumped in the water to go after Jesus. The Bible said that we just read that he wrapped his outer garment around him first, for he had taken it off. My question is, just a side note, did they fish naked? I mean, he had his outer garment on, he took it off. So if they fished naked, that's just a tragedy waiting to happen, but that's beside the point. But anyway, Peter must have said, if that is Jesus, then I am going to go see him. He got excited. The other disciples, they stayed in the boat, probably afraid of water, probably Southern Baptists. Now, this is where the teachings come into play. This is where the story gets personal. This is where Jesus reinstates Peter. We pick up in verse 15. When they had finished eating, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" "Yes, Lord," he said, "you know that I love you." Jesus said, "Feed my lambs." Again, Jesus said, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" He answered, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." Jesus said, "Take care of my sheep." The third time he said to him, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Peter was hurt because Jesus asked him the third time, "Do you love me?" He said, "Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you." Jesus said, "Feed my sheep. Very truly, I tell you, when you were younger, you dressed yourself and went where you wanted. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and someone else will dress you and lead you to where you do not want to go." Jesus said this to indicate the kind of death by which Peter would glorify God. And then he said to him, "Now follow me." So what we have here is a man, Peter, who went from Hakuna Matata, who was being chased away, to being reinstated by Jesus to the Lion King. Now, I want to talk to you just briefly tonight about the way that I understand this story and the way that I understand the gospel of Jesus. First thing to notice in this story is the amazing acceptance of God for those who fail. The Bible says here in John 21 that Jesus came looking for them. He met them where they were. Jesus did this with his entire life. The Word became flesh and dwelt among us. In this story, Jesus came and ate breakfast with them. You know, eating a meal with people can be a very intimate and personal time, and I believe that's what Jesus wanted here, and that's what he wants from us. He wants to have that intimate and personal relationship with us. And then why did Jesus ask Peter 3 times, "Do you love me?" I think we all know the answer to that. Because Peter had denied him 3 times. And then why did Jesus ask Peter, "Do you love me?" in front of the other disciples? Why did he do this publicly? Because Peter denied Jesus publicly as well. And the other disciples needed to hear Peter openly declare his love for Jesus. Without hearing those words, the doubts would linger forever with these guys. The man who had been so boastful, so sure of himself, so confident of his own courage, is now thoroughly humbled. Jesus' first question, "Do you love me more than these?" was a subtle reminder of his previous boasts, because Peter boasted to be more loyal than the other disciples. In his reply, Peter declares his love for Jesus, but he does not compare himself with anybody else this time. And as painful as this was, it was absolutely necessary. Jesus is cleaning the wound so that it might be properly healed. He's getting rid of Peter's guilt and shame by dealing with it. Consider what Jesus does not do. He does not try to make Peter feel guilty. Guilt is not from God. Guilt is from Satan. Jesus will never make you feel guilty. Jesus did not humiliate publicly either. He didn't ask Peter, "Are you sorry for what you did?" He didn't ask Peter that. He doesn't make him promise to do better either. He asks one question, and one question only. Do you love me? That's it. Which brings me to my second point. Jesus wants us to take care of one another. He told Peter 3 times, "Tend my sheep, feed my lambs, tend my sheep," because he values relationships. He wants us to take care of each other. He wants us to have relationships with one another. Why? Because you talk. You get to know someone. You get to know their past, their future aspirations, their fears. There's conversations happening. But how many times does the church just dismiss people without even having a conversation with them, without looking them in the eye and talking with them and listening to them? Because, see, there are 3 qualifications for those who would. The second is love. And the third qualification, this is a hard one, is love. Because first we love, then we serve. First we love, then we speak. First we love, then we lead. You know, we've seen Peter before Jesus was crucified. He was the most outspoken disciple who defended Jesus. He was always right beside Jesus. He had a front row seat to watching Jesus work and perform all his miracles. Then when confronted while Jesus is being led away to be crucified, Peter denies Jesus not once, not twice, but 3 times. Peter messed up and he knew it. It was probably hard for him to even look Jesus in the face while they were eating breakfast that morning. But that beautiful moment during breakfast is when Jesus reinstates Peter. He restores Peter. He reminds Peter of his love for him. Did that moment during breakfast work? Yes. Peter never denied Jesus again. And just a few days after this incident, on the day of Pentecost, a fully restored Peter stood in the temple courts and preached a mighty gospel sermon to the very men who had crucified Jesus. 3,000 came to know Jesus personally that day. But also this restoration comes with a hard truth, which brings me to my last point. Because after Peter's restoration, Jesus tells Peter there's going to be a cost involved. Jesus says, Peter, when you were younger on the other side of the cross before I was crucified, you said you would follow me. But you really didn't know what all that was about. But Peter, now that you are older and on this side of the cross, it's going to cost you. Jesus basically explains to Peter that by following him, it would cost him his entire life. Peter was later crucified upside down for following Jesus, but he chose to be crucified upside down because he didn't feel worthy enough to be crucified right side up like Jesus was. You know, we will never have to pay a cost like Peter did for following Jesus. None of us will never know that kind of pain for being a Christ follower. But I believe some of us may have paid some kind of price at some point in our lives for following Jesus. You know, there are so many people out there who claim to follow Jesus, but you don't see it because there's so much hatred in their hearts for other people. They are the hyenas. These are the people who have told me and other people in this church that we are disqualified from the ministry because they felt they had that power over us. They exclude, they condemn, they judge, and they shun others. And I've often said that the cruelest people on this planet are those who are cruel for Jesus, which is an oxymoron. So Peter remains a figure of interest to us today. We can't get enough of him. We know him well because maybe we see him every morning when we look in the mirror. We love Peter because we can see ourselves in his story. In fact, his story is our story. For all of us, the process of Christian growth has many ups and downs. Peter, the rock, often seemed very unrock-like. It took repeated failures to produce rock-solid character in him. But Jesus never gave up on this man. We love Peter because we can see ourselves in his story. This story serves as a powerful illustration of the human condition. Like Peter, we all have moments when we fail, when we deny Jesus through our words, actions, or lack thereof. We make promises we don't keep. We compromise our values or shy away from speaking the truth. But the story does not end there. Jesus offers us the same grace and forgiveness he extended to Peter. In our brokenness and weakness, Jesus meets us with compassion, inviting us to restoration. He longs to reinstate us, to use our failures as stepping stones toward growth and a deeper intimacy with him. Just as Peter's denial became a transformative turning point in his life, our moments of denial can become opportunities for redemption, renewal, and a deeper understanding of God's boundless love and forgiveness. But here's the final irony. From beginning to end, Jesus believed in Peter more than Peter believed in himself. And the real hero of Peter's story isn't Peter. The real hero, of course, is Jesus. And I think that's why John 21 in this Bible, so that all of us Peter types would know that though we fall again and again, by God's grace, we can keep on getting back up. He chooses you. He calls your name. And just like Mufasa did in the movie, he reminds his son who he was. He reminded him that he was the son of a king. We are children of the King, and we get to be a part of what he is doing today. As the band comes up, let's go to the Lord in prayer.